Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's the acting CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, and Twitter. Combined, those companies are estimated to be worth around $700 billion. In other words, he controls more wealth than entire countries create in a year. Although no single person can end the climate crisis on their own, Elon is so powerful that if anyone can do it, it would be him. If anyone wants to claim that Elon is saving the planet, Tesla is probably their biggest piece of proof. To understand the impact of Tesla on the world, we need to understand exactly how important EVs are to ending the climate crisis. Transportation causes about 14% of global emissions, and experts say electric cars are a top solution in reducing those emissions. In fact, it's hard to imagine we can get to zero emissions without them. Now, lately, I've seen electric vehicles get some flack from people who say what we really need is more public transit. The haters are absolutely right that we need more public transit, more walkable cities, more bike infrastructure, high-speed rail, better zoning, and basically everything else they're advocating for, but we also need electric vehicles. Around 17% of Americans and 25% of Europeans live in rural areas, places where rail or bikes won't cut it. Trucks are also a huge part of the shipping industry, and although we should work on shifting some of that into efficient rail, trucks will remain a big part of the shipping industry for the foreseeable future, and we will need to make them electric. Again, I can't stress enough how much we need to build public transit in livable cities. I live in LA, and anytime I leave the house, I literally spend like an hour in traffic. We need to fix our city's infrastructure problems, and doing so will have a massive impact on the climate, but we also need to replace gas cars with EVs. And that's where Tesla comes in. On the surface, it seems easy to say Elon Musk revolutionized transportation and took EVs from a distant moonshot into a fast-growing market that will inevitably replace gas cars. But to understand the full picture, we have to dive into the bizarre history of electric vehicles. Believe it or not, electric vehicles were actually invented over 100 years ago. And for a brief moment back then, they were even more popular than gas-powered cars. Gas cars were loud, they spewed toxic fumes, you had to switch gears manually, and you even had to crank them on manually. Electric vehicles were seen as a better option in cities since they were simpler and cleaner. New York City even had a fleet of more than 60 electric taxis around the year 1900. Since electricity was becoming more common around the turn of the century, it was becoming easy to charge these vehicles too. But in 1912, Henry Ford built out the Model T and won the market by creating a gas car that costs only $650 compared to EVs that were at least double that price. Quickly, he started to build an advantage that would eventually end the electric vehicle industry, at least for the time. The US also built a lot of better roads that meant longer trips were more attractive, something that the weak batteries of EVs couldn't handle yet. And since more oil was being discovered in the US, gas prices fell more over time, leading EVs to be almost entirely outcompeted by 1935. So after a promising start, EVs kind of sat on the sidelines as an interesting concept with no real market for the next 80 years. In the 70s, concerns around energy independence, air pollution, and rising gas prices made many automakers explore electric vehicle concepts that helped push forward the tech, but with no commercial success. It wasn't until the 90s that EVs started really showing promise again. In LA, air pollution was becoming a huge problem, and the government knew it had to take some big swings to fight it. Partly inspired by an announcement from GM of a next-gen fully electric car, California Air Resources Board created a regulation that required automakers to sell zero-emissions vehicles, starting with 1% of their sales in California, but ratcheting up to 10% by the mid-2000s. It was a daring piece of legislation that set the stage for modern electric vehicles. As a result of this legislation, in 1996, GM came out with the EV1, a new electric vehicle that gained a cult following, boasting features like 0 to 60 acceleration in 9 seconds, top speed of 80 miles per hour, and a 70-mile charge. It was by far the best EV the world had ever seen. The very next year, Toyota came out with the Toyota Prius, the first mass-produced hybrid ever, that is now one of the most popular cars in the world. The car caught on instantly, and it started to seem like electric vehicles were gaining some traction. Other major car manufacturers like Chrysler, Ford, Honda, and Toyota were also forced to hit the market with EVs. But then, 6 years after EV1's initial release, the auto and oil industries pressured California to remove the legislation that required them. And since they were expensive to upkeep, GM decided to repossess the beloved EV1s and literally smash them to pieces. So although the Prius would keep rising up the ranks as a commercial success, fully electric vehicles were in a tough spot in the mid-2000s. It was so bad that there was even a movie created in 2006 called Who Killed the Electric Car? It just seemed like the industry had gone in full reverse and was now hopeless. That is seemingly until Tesla launched. According to some versions of the story, they single-handedly pioneered electric cars, transforming EVs from a moonshot idea into our inevitable future. But the real story, as you might suspect, is more complicated than that. The story of Tesla really starts before Tesla. It starts in the late 80s with a man named Alan Cocconi. He was brought on as a contractor by GM to help them build out the EV tech for what eventually would become GM's EV1. Cocconi helped pioneer many key innovations here. Everything from the core motors of the car to exciting EV features that we still talk about today, like regenerative braking and fast charging capabilities. After his groundbreaking work for GM, Cocconi founded an electric motor company called AC Propulsion. He built on his ideas for EVs there, mostly through retrofitting existing cars with electric motors. Though retrofitting cars didn't turn out to be a game-changing business, one invention from AC Propulsion would go on to make history as the source of inspiration for Tesla, the handmade, fully electric car known as the T0. That brings us to Tesla's original founders, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. Elon would enter the picture later as an investor. Eberhard was interested in electric cars, and through a neighbor, he was introduced to the T0. Eberhard was hooked. In the T0, he could see the future of high-performance electric vehicles. In 2004, Eberhard took the T0 on a roadshow to Silicon Valley to find some investors. At the same time, Elon Musk had recently earned a fortune cashing out on the internet company he helped start, and he was ready to deploy his newly minted millions in key technology like EVs. Elon had met Eberhard a few years prior, and in 2004, he decided to invest $6.5 million into Eberhard's new venture. The company started raising money at a breakneck pace. From 2004 to 2010, Tesla raised around $100 million, with a substantial portion of that coming from Elon. And as he invested more, Elon felt he needed more control of the company. So he gradually cut out Tesla's original founders and made himself the CEO of Tesla. With Elon running the show, Tesla launched its first car, the luxury sports car known as the Roadster. The Roadster was a hit, a luxury electric vehicle with a range of over 200 miles, almost 3 times that of the EV1 GM released 10 years prior. It had a long range for an EV, and its acceleration performance was really impressive. Tesla was officially on the map as an automaker. Tesla started with high-end cars and progressively launched cheaper and better versions, and in under 20 years, they became the most valuable car company in the world. The fact that Tesla was able to go from an upstart to actually producing a car in less than 10 years is no small feat. Most car companies were founded 100 years ago. Auto manufacturing is a capital-intensive industry that before Tesla saw very little interest from venture capital investors. And Tesla's success continued. By 2020, Tesla became the most valuable car company in the world. And since then, things have only gotten crazier. Tesla is currently valued at over $500 billion. That's as much as the next 5 car companies combined. This is an absurd valuation, so it's worth asking. How did this happen? How could Elon take this upstart car company and transform it into one of the most valuable companies in the world in less than 20 years? It seems like everyone has a different take on this. Some say it's because of key business strategy decisions, like having extreme vertical integration or its unconventional marketing strategy. Others say it's simply because it's a meme stock, a total fluke that will collapse soon. And others still put Elon on a pedestal, attributing Tesla's success entirely to the genius of its CEO. The truth is, it's nearly impossible to accurately explain this kind of thing. Different experts have different opinions. And despite its success, it's worth noting that in terms of producing cars on time, Tesla has actually had major issues. Both the Model X and Model S, two of Tesla's best sellers, were significantly delayed. The Model X was supposed to get its first delivery out in 2013, but it wasn't until 2015 that it hit the streets. Of course, in spite of these missed targets, Tesla's stock price performed very well, and this gave Elon access to more funding to build electric vehicles. So what did he get right? The first and most obvious point is simply that Tesla makes good cars. The Tesla Model S has been ranked best in class, and Consumer Reports even called it the best car ever tested. Yes, there's been some hiccups, but for the most part, Teslas are considered highly desirable cars. One of the other key reasons proponents cite for Tesla's success is its focus on software. A 2020 Harvard Business Review article claims, quote, "Software is a big part of Tesla's advantage. Traditional automakers are ill-prepared to compete in today's software-centered world. Unlike nimble Tesla, they are big, bureaucratic, slow to respond to customers, and culturally different from a software company." As the founder of a startup, I can see what this argument is trying to say. It's a lot easier to move quickly and make decisions if you have a 10-person team compared to a 10,000-person team. But Tesla makes highly engineered physical products. Fundamentally, it can only move so fast. It took them 7 years to go from idea to a delivered car. For a software company, that process can be as fast as a few months or even weeks. I just don't see how acting nimbly can give that much of an advantage for EVs. The second aspect of the article's claim is that the literal computer code of Tesla is critical. Investment analysts often come to a similar conclusion. The quality software and electronics experience of Tesla's are a big part of their success. Here, the argument makes a bit more sense to me. It's true that Tesla has relatively well-designed electronics, probably the best, at least during the early 2010s. So this is a plus to Tesla, but it can't fully explain their success. The electronics is only one small factor of what makes people buy a car. There's more reasons analysts cite as key to Tesla's success. It has invested heavily into battery technology, and the falling cost of batteries due to economies of scale is a key part of Tesla's story. They also made a bold decision to not pay for any advertising and do their marketing directly to their audience. Not to mention the fact that their self-driving accomplishments and ambitions have positioned Tesla as a leader not only in the luxury car market, but also in the emerging market of self-driving. Any one of these technologies or decisions can't explain Tesla's high valuation, though. Instead, from my perspective, all these differences add up into a certain mystique around Tesla. The way Elon runs the company stands out from other car companies, and investors love that. Elon has been building his mystique for years. In 2018, he sold a literal flamethrower to his fans, and later that year launched his Tesla Roadster into space as a PR stunt. Then in 2020, things got even crazier. You see, 2020 was a wild year for investing. After the COVID shock, a practice known as meme investing started taking off. A growing number of investors were putting their money behind goofy little trends instead of into traditionally valuable companies. You may remember the insane spike of GameStop's stock price, or the crypto boom that took place after the pandemic. Elon played into it all. First by selling short shorts, which was a pun on the stock market term shorting a stock. Then he bought Bitcoin with Tesla and hyped up Dogecoin on his own Twitter. Meme investors saw this as a positive sign to put more of their cash behind Elon and invested more into Tesla, driving the stock price up 5x, way past what any other car company would even dream of. And this is in spite of Tesla's car sales being tiny compared to these other car companies. But it's worth noting here that even if it's largely meme-driven hype, Elon could use this money he raised to hopefully create more and better EVs. This hype cycle isn't necessarily some nefarious move by Elon. It's more the result of our stock market that incentivizes companies to prioritize growth and big dreams tomorrow over realism today. So, looking at the whole story of Tesla, an interesting question comes to my mind. Could someone else have run it better? With any company, it's impossible to tell what would have happened if the leadership was different. But perhaps if Elon hadn't stepped in as CEO, the original founding team could have still led Tesla to success. After all, Eberhard, the original CEO, was also a software startup founder before he started Tesla. Maybe he could have conjured the same story that Elon did and raised the necessary capital for Teslas to succeed, even while being a kinder leader. But is Elon saving the planet or just successful at turning a profit? Well, the story of the wider electric vehicles industry suggests that maybe we didn't even need Tesla in order for EVs to succeed. The best piece of evidence for this theory is the story of the Nissan Leaf. The Nissan Leaf was a compact hatchback that hit the market in 2010, shortly after the Tesla Roadster, and quickly became the best-selling electric vehicle the world had ever seen. The strategy behind the Nissan Leaf was almost the opposite of Elon's strategy with Tesla. The Leaf was an electric car for the masses, which was way less flashy than the Roadster, but also way more affordable. It was very well received, and for almost 10 years after its initial launch, the Leaf was the best-selling EV in the world. The Leaf came on the back of Nissan's long history with EVs. Nissan was the first major automaker to adopt efficient lithium-ion batteries for its EVs back in 1998, and had launched a couple forays into EVs throughout the 90s and 2000s before deciding to go big on the Leaf. And truly, they went big on the Leaf, like huge. They invested $5 billion into it by 2011. That's more than half of their research budget for 2007 to 2012. That $5 billion, that's a huge number. It's around 5 times more funding than Elon and Tesla had access to at the time. The bet played out well for many years, but over time, Nissan lost its lead. By 2019, the Nissan Leaf was passed by Tesla's Model 3 as the best-selling electric vehicle. But looking at recent EV market share numbers, something else stands out: China. Although they got a late start, Chinese automakers have quickly become huge players in the EV market. Today, Tesla only sells about 20% of the EVs coming onto the road globally. They're still the biggest single producer, but other companies are proving to be strong competition. 2 Chinese companies each hold about 10% market share, and Volkswagen and Hyundai are close behind. So while Tesla's valuation is a lot bigger, its lead on actual car sales is much smaller. So Tesla has certainly been a leader for EVs, and it has had tremendous financial success, but it's kind of hard to say if they were essential to the development of the EV industry. Sure, Elon helped hype it up, but companies like Nissan were investing in EVs way more than Tesla was even able to in the beginning. In general, it's also important to point out a key reason for Tesla and all other electric vehicle companies' success is the policy and government intervention that has enabled it to succeed. In 2010, Tesla got approved for a $465 million low-interest loan from the US government. This effectively doubled their funding, and it came at a time when Tesla had delivered only 500 Roadsters. This likely helped them scale much faster. Tesla has also earned billions of dollars from selling what are called regulatory credits. These credits are essentially an evolution of a policy we covered earlier in this video, the zero emissions vehicle regulations that California pushed in the 90s. With regulatory credits, governments set quotas on how clean car companies have to be. And if car companies don't hit their quota, they have to buy credits from companies like Tesla that make electric cars. All car companies could benefit from these regulations, so this isn't something unique to Tesla, but it does help point to why the EV revolution finally happened in the 2010s. In addition to some key tech progress, EVs were championed by the US and other governments around the world. The truth is, there is no single person or even single company that caused electric vehicles to go from distant moonshot to key climate solution that will inevitably replace gas cars. Tracing back the story of EVs, you see that Tesla and Nissan each play a big role. But then you also see that GM paved the way for them in the 90s with the EV1. But even GM's contribution is tricky. They invested in EVs as a visionary move by their leadership that was expecting regulation led by the California Air Resources Board. And their investment actually led to that regulation in the form of California's zero emissions vehicle mandate. And if we're talking about specific individuals, there's a strong case to be made that Alan Cocconi of AC Propulsion pioneered so much key technology that he deserves most of the credit for modern EVs. This is how progress so often goes. Each innovation stands on the shoulders of giants, but then whoever is standing tallest is given all the credit, ignoring all the stepping stones that they built on. When thinking about progress, it's easy to point your finger at one person and say, they did it. This person is the one who has changed the world. But the reality is more complicated. Most of the time, the world is just waiting for someone to connect the dots, and it's the work of a dozen or 100 people that one person becomes famous for. And when thinking about who to give credit to, we should be careful spinning legends about leaders who are bad role models. If you're watching this, you probably already know about the dozens of controversies Elon Musk has been involved in. Everything from calling COVID-19 concern dumb, to fraudulent claims to take Tesla private, to buying Twitter, firing half the company, and then hiring some of those people back. And although Tesla is certainly Elon's biggest impact on the planet so far, there's a couple other things that he's working on that are worth noting here. Let's start with Twitter. It's too early to tell, but with how it's trending, Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter could go down as the worst thing he ever did for our planet. Since he is now openly endorsing Republican candidates and is changing Twitter's content moderation policies, he could end up boosting climate-denying candidates around the world. If this change were to swing a key election or two the wrong way, it could set the world back years on climate change. Elon has also endorsed some high-emitting crypto projects on Twitter, and in 2021, Tesla bought over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. Since Bitcoin consumes more electricity than the entire United Kingdom, Elon certainly dealt a blow to the planet with this move. But from my perspective, this specific decision actually had a tiny negative impact compared to other ways Elon has changed our planet. The other main way people say Elon is destroying the planet is through his rocket company, SpaceX. It's true that launching rockets is bad for our atmosphere, but it's worth noting that rockets actually play a key role in ending the climate crisis. In 2020, SpaceX launched a satellite called Sentinel-6 into orbit, which monitors the behavior of the ocean and gives us key insights into how our climate is actually changing. We also rely on satellites to help us track emissions and even detect and monitor deforestation. At the same time, the exact warming impact of rockets is complicated. Right now, air travel consumes 100 times more fuel than space rockets do, but even though they use less fuel, we're not exactly sure rockets' total impact yet. Recent research suggests rockets emit a lot of highly warming soot at high altitude, and they may even be punching a hole in the ozone. Luckily, some companies like Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin are working on hydrogen-fueled spacecraft that would be fully fossil fuel-free and only emit H2O as a byproduct. If SpaceX were to use this technology instead, it would have only a tiny environmental impact, and I'd feel comfortable giving it an A or even an A+ for its climate impact. But as it stands, we'll have to ding some points for how much fossil fuel these rockets are using. Another positive argument for Elon's impact on the planet is his involvement with SolarCity, a solar panel company that has helped install 8 million solar panels. Elon helped his cousin start the company back in 2006, and Tesla would go on to purchase SolarCity as part of its bets on energy. SolarCity and the energy projects in Tesla that it spun into are awesome and a really solid plus for Elon's legacy on the planet. But Elon's role in SolarCity was limited. Sure, he gets some points on it, but he has helped more in an advisor capacity rather than in a really hands-on way. So, with all these other projects alongside his legacy and impact in electric vehicles, can we say Elon Musk is really saving the planet? In my eyes, he's probably helped more than he's hurt, but he's played a relatively small role in the 100-year history of electric vehicles, and some of his other projects might be taking us a step backward. And keep in mind, electric vehicles are certainly important, but they are just one part of the puzzle when it comes to addressing the climate crisis. At Wren, the company I co-founded, we help fund these key climate solutions, and we want to make this YouTube channel a place where you can learn more about them. So please subscribe and spread the word if you want to help save the planet. And if you want to do even more for the planet, check out our website and calculate your carbon footprint, or sign up today and fund key climate solutions. There's more information in the description of this video, but until then, thanks so much for watching.